The other day at the airport, I realized that sometimes we optimize against something that is not optimal. So, a personal story that triggers something in me, and I would like to share it with you. So, I was in the airport, I was queuing at a low cost counter because I was flying with a low cost, which is nothing against, from time to time is quite convenient. And I remembered how, when I was younger, like university times, so many times I spent hours, sometimes a couple of days in a row, to try to find the perfect combination because it's not too expensive, but it doesn't take 17 hours just to go from Paris to Rome or something like that. So I remember I was almost obsessing on what is the cheapest flight and the lowest time so that the duration is not unreal or unrealistic or like, yeah, like 17 hours, sometimes 30 hours, because okay, this flight is super cheap and you fly from Paris to Dubai and then wait there 8 hours or 10 hours and then fly back to Istanbul and from Istanbul to Rome. It's like, okay, whatever, this is like, the cost overweights the benefit. Yeah, it's very cheap in terms of money, but it requires you an amount of time that is unreasonable. But by trying to find the perfect combination, looking for different combinations, when does it fly out, does it get back in, what does it cost, I spent a huge amount of time. And many people would say, dude, it's just 50 euro. Just take it and pay for it. It's 50 euro, don't obsess over it. But I always felt that I wanted to do the best with my means, to optimize what I could do with my means. And sometimes people have like better capabilities of paying or better willingness to pay. But now in hindsight, I learned it's good to optimize. I'm happy that I learned how to optimize and to find a good combination, which means now I can do it with a bit more common sense and avoid spending 3 days or 3 nights or several hours to trying to find the perfect combination. But this is also because I learned to do that in a wrong way. But the main point, which is about work, because I talk about optimization, work, efficiency, effectiveness, I was optimizing against the wrong KPI, we would say in like corporate language, but I was optimizing for the wrong measure, for the wrong thing. I thought about that. Now, in hindsight, when I look back, I say, okay, how many hours did it cost to try to optimize all these things? They try to find the perfect combination of price and duration. I would look back and say, whoa, okay, how much more expensive is this flight, which is quite convenient? It's a good trade-off. It's not the perfect one, it's not optimal, but it's a very good trade-off between price and duration, and it's convenient for the time when it flies out. Great. Okay. And honestly, most of the times we were talking about 50 euro more or max 100 euro more, which at that time, when I was a student, was quite enough. But that's where I didn't get to do this switch that for some reason I had the other day in the airport. It's like, okay, how many hours is it costing me to try to find the perfect combination to save 50 euro? And I literally, sometimes it's about 4, 5, 6, 7 hours. And now I will look back and say, okay, 50 euro more. What can I do to generate this profit, to get this 50 euro more so that I can pay the flight without obsessing at nighttime, after studying, after working, to find the perfect combination? And thought about that, and also going back to my previous experiences, I was like, hey, if you go and, for example, work at a restaurant for one night as a waiter, a few hours, in a normal average restaurant, not the worst one, not the best one, you might get something around like 50 euro for an extra service. So working at a restaurant would have given me the money I needed for paying the flight. I would have spent probably around the same amount of hours, and I would have learned something, I would have socialized with people, I would have learned the skill to gain my own money to pay for something I need, which is much more functional than trying to just cut the costs and save money for the sake of it. Well, not for the sake of it, because it was needed, but just obsessing about cutting the costs. And that made me think about an analogy. You know, I work a lot with analogies, I like analogies. It made me think about companies. How many times do companies try to save costs at all costs and forget about what they're good at and how they can generate profit and create value so that they don't necessarily need to cut all costs. They might optimize the cost, which is important, but not just cut costs and eliminate all the costs. Because in many cases, these would actually be more expensive than working properly. And that also made me think of startups. Maybe when you start a company, there are a lot of things that you need to be aware of. You need to keep the costs low as much as possible, which is fine. It reminds me of when I was at university, I wanted to keep the costs low. I would do everything possible to keep the costs low, but growing up, getting more solidity, both in terms of mindset, even before the economic solidity, it's about, okay, am I optimizing against the right things? Am I optimizing for the right targets? Am I optimizing in the right way? And sometimes if I look at companies, the answer is probably no. This is not wrong, it's just not ideal. It's just not what gives you the maximum result with the minimum effort, which should be the target for every individual when working, and of course for every cooperation of individuals which forms a company. So I hope you like this video from holiday time, sunshine. It's a bit of a different video, but I really thought about that. I thought about this metaphorical or this analogy, this parallelism between my old times at university and now, and companies work sometimes quite the same. So I would invite you to think about where in your company or where in your work you're trying to do something because you really want to obtain this target, but maybe you're just trying to do something in a direction that is not so optimal for you. And just a slight change in perspective is what would allow you to use the same amount of effort and to obtain much better results. And this is what coaching and consulting is for. It's when someone looks at you, works with you, together with you, you're a team, you bond together and look at things from an objective point of view from the outside and from a subjective point of view from the inside, and together come up with something that makes you shift your reality just a tiny little bit, that allows you to get better productivity, more fulfillment, and higher profits. So if you're interested in knowing more of how you or your company could get better results, just get in contact with me, send me a message, and let's start a discussion together so that you will get the great results that you deserve.